morning shine, shine, shine. Las Vegas, shine your light on me.
Welcome to Las Vegas Tonight with your award-winning host, Dale Davidson. Dale interviews fascinating guests from top-ranked celebrities to people just like you who have an important story to tell. For more than 15 years, Dale has broadcast every week from the fabulous Las Vegas Strip. He finds the people who really make Las Vegas a one-of-a-kind city and lets the world know just what's happening in this remarkable town. You'll discover why 50 million people visit the entertainment capital of the world every year. Stay tuned for another exciting episode of Las Vegas Tonight.
Welcome to Las Vegas Tonight. I'm your host, Dale Davidson. We are very pleased to have with us Eric McConnell. He's a return guest. Was on the show once before, and we talked about a book at that time, Young Noah, one in the Young Noah series, and we're going to talk about another one. Eric, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Dale.
We appreciate it. What was the first Young Noah book?
The first Young Noah book is this one right here, Lamb's Tale, and it focuses on Noah from Noah and the Ark, imagined as a young boy.
Yeah.
And Noah has all kinds of adventures, but the adventures are the animals that come into his life that are troubled, that have different issues, disabilities, things like that. And Noah, he, with the help of the Lord, after he prays, he helps them out of their dilemmas. He designs solutions to their problems.
Okay.
And so it's basically an inexhaustible storyline of endless troubled animals coming into Noah's life.
That's nice. And
little does he know at a young age that this is going to translate into his ultimate call with the Ark. But I just thought it was a really interesting.
It's a prequel to the Ark story.
Precisely.
Really. Yeah, that's neat. What gave you that idea?
Well, I have to give credit to my business partner, Craig Perry. His name's on the book.
Yeah, we're going to have him on in the third segment.
Yeah. I was actively working in animation as a storyboard artist on animated TV series. I was very busy. Craig approached me about 15 years ago with the idea of Noah imagined as a boy who God would use to help troubled animals. And I was incredibly busy. I just didn't have time to do it.
Yeah.
A little bit later, explain the process of how God transitioned me out. But this appears to be what I have been prepared for all these years. So
isn't that amazing? Now, do you anticipate this becoming a series, this becoming a movie?
You know, that's my dream. The books are basically laying the foundation of this ancient world that Noah lives in, kind of the staging area of where all these miraculous, events take place and all these little troubled animals. And again, it's something that's given to Noah as a gift. He's really not even aware that he has it. It's just they come to him. They're automatically drawn to him. And so it's definitely a world, a pre-flood world, if you will. So it's a primeval sort of a world that I tried to imagine visually of what it would be like. So that makes it a lot of fun, but it would translate to a really good, I think, to a very beautiful animated series, or maybe a direct-to-video type film.
That's a fantastic idea. I can visualize it. Yeah, and seeing your great artwork in these books. As I said before we rolled tape, I've been reading this story to my grandkids.
Oh,
they love the story.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad. It's always good to get feedback.
It's just really a great story. Tell me about Eagle Eye. What's that one about?
Eagle Eye is the story of a strained father-son relationship. In a nutshell, it's a little eagle who has very high expectations put on him as an eaglet. Eagles, as you know, have their extraordinary eyesight, but that's the exact place that this little eagle is lacking. He's almost blind. He tries to hunt, to fish, to do all the things that he's going to have to do to be the tribal leader of the emperor eagles. And he fails, and his father's very impatient, and so there's a there's a strained relationship between father and son. Without going into too much detail, he goes off on an adventure, and he encounters Noah, and there's a wonderful reconciliation at the end and a redemptive ending, and there's a huge healing of the father and son relationship.
Now, does this come out of your personal experience?
Not mine, really, but observed from other people. One of the books is more of a personalized experience journey, if you will, but it was inspired by bits and pieces of the lives of other people that I know.
Yeah.
And so
all of these have parallels in the real world, and it's a way of illustrating how problems can be solved for kids.
Exactly. Children, it's hard for them, to define complicated emotional issues and identify things and dynamics. And so the animals are kind of placeholders for the kids to see, well, that little animal went through what I went through.
Yeah.
And here's, he got the help that he needed, or he found help from God. Because what I'm trying to do in all the books is, in a very gentle way, have the kids see that their Heavenly Father loves them.
It is very gentle. You've done a great job of that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and kids, it's a huge concept for kids. God is a huge concept. But when you can put it in that, the animal needs help kind of environment, I think they can visualize it.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Exactly.
Let's talk about your life a little bit, if you don't mind. You grew up in L.A., right?
Yes, born and raised in L.A., specifically a suburb called Sherman Oaks.
Oh, yeah, nice town.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You liked it there?
I did. Sherman Oaks has changed a lot over the years, but it was a growing suburb when I grew up, and I grew up in a neighborhood that was relatively new. These kind of middle class tract homes, if you will. And,
one after another, and
pretty much.
Yeah. Now, were you a lonely kid? A lot of creative people were lonely as children, and because they lived an imaginary life. Did you experience that?
Precisely.
Wow.
Yeah. Just because of the logistics of where I was living, but also that I was an only child, and I didn't go to a local school that was close by and immediately. There was just a lot of factors that kept me isolated.
Okay.
Plus, as a kid, my temperament, I was shy, I was introverted, and it lent itself to spending a lot of time alone as a kid. And when you don't have siblings, then you kind of go into your own world
and invent friends and
friends. And well, my friend was just mountains of sketchbooks, because both my parents were artistic, and I really admired the work that they did. My dad was an art director in an ad agency, and my mom was a portrait painter. And I was just fascinated, with visual stuff and storybooks and watching them do their work. So I would become obsessed with trying to copy their artwork.
Wow.
And it and then, combined with the isolation, it just became a passion.
Yeah, and there was a divorce in the family. Did it make that all worse?
Yeah, that was
a trauma for you.
Yeah, that was the traumatic thing that kind of added to the isolation that caused me to retreat into an imaginary world, if you will, and try to cope, as only a child can do without the interpretive skills, and go into that world and, just compensate with my own little cartoon characters and their adventures and stuff like that.
And you were in a private school most of that time?
Yes, until the 4th grade. I was in an Episcopal school, so I had sort of a nominal exposure to Christian faith and a basic sort of revealing of who Jesus is, but not in a very detailed sort of a way. But it was also academically extremely challenging. It was a prep school. And every grade level, the level of pressure would increase. And by the end of the 4th grade, I was topped out.
You'd had it.
I'd had it because, I was a solid B student, but I really had to work for it. I'm more of a intuitive thinker, and so it was killing me.
Yeah.
And I begged my mom at the time, look,
Please get me out of here.
yeah, I mean, it was as much work in the 4th grade as a college level course.
Yeah.
So I needed to exit at that point.
Yeah. You went to the public school at that point?
Yes, I went to Sherman Oaks Elementary. And you know, that was a school that I could actually walk to. And so it was a lot more relaxed.
Made some friends?
Some really good friends, eccentric, artistic type friends, kind of like me. So it was
Did
a
you
good
fit in with them?
Yeah.
That's great.
That's a story for another time, but yeah.
That's really good. And then the rest of your schooling, you went to junior college and...
Yeah, I went to Birmingham High School, and then after that, I felt like the transition to a 4-year university would have been a little bit extreme, so I ended up going to Pierce College, which is in Woodland Hills, the west end of the San Fernando Valley, where Sherman Oaks is.
Yeah,
and
right.
after that, to Cal State Northridge for 4 years.
Okay, all in the LA area.
Yeah.
Now, all the time you were painting, you were drawing. Did you know this was going to be your life?
I wanted it to. Here's the catch. I did not have enough confidence in myself that I could work professionally.
Really?
My level of confidence in my ability to do this professionally just simply wasn't there. So I had a lot of silly side roads and failed miniature careers before I actually got into animation at 30 years old.
Yeah.
I started later, you know, after trying to do sales. I worked in the fitness industry for a while. I did all kinds of stuff.
You couldn't rely on your talent.
I just didn't think I could do it.
Yeah.
And finally,
you're not alone. A lot of people have this.
God had to literally break my leg to get through to me that, no, you were not created to go and waste your life in some meaningless career. This is the skill that I gave you to do to glorify me, and you know, you'll discover what it is as you, so, okay, you know. Yeah.
Tell me about your injury. It was a bad one, wasn't it?
Well, concurrent with everything I've just shared, I was born with like a hip dysplasia. It's a condition with shallow hip sockets.
Okay.
As I was growing up, I really wasn't aware of a problem, but my hips kind of they didn't feel right. They clicked and all that. Later in life, before I came to know Jesus as my Lord and my Savior, I coped by a lot of extreme exercise. I was a cyclist, I was a runner. I literally ran my body into the ground with a hip problem that couldn't handle that kind of punishment. So by the age of 23, I had aseptic necrosis in both hips. All the cartilage was gone, and it was bone on bone.
Oh, Lord, that had to be so painful.
It was very, very painful, and my life came to a screeching halt. Had to drop out of college, was ready to graduate, and God used it, but it was about 3 or 4 years of hell on earth, because...
So you were about 26 by this point, huh?
Between the age of 23 and 26 was this interim period, and that's the point at which people were brought into my life to share the gospel. By that time, I'd become so bitter and cynical that I basically had lost my faith altogether that I had as a child. I had a kind of a primal belief in God and all that, but that's what God used, that level of desperation, to bring me back to Him.
Did you have a single come to Jesus moment, if you will?
I did.
Tell me about it.
I did. There was a lot that led up to it, but I couldn't run or cycle anymore because I was in so much pain, but I was so driven that I ended up joining a gym. I thought, well, at least I can work out my upper body. And at the gym, and I was not a Christian at this time, I met a guy who was a competitive bodybuilder, but he was a really on fire Christian. He was really cool to me, and he worked on me for a solid year to get him to go to church.
Wow.
And I kept telling him, I've had all that religious stuff. I've done my tour of duty. I don't need that religious stuff anymore.
Done my pew time.
I've put it in my time. I punched the clock, and you know. And he said, no. It's not about that. It's about Jesus. It's about a relationship with God, not all that religious stuff you went through. And, you know, to me still, it was like, bark, bark, you know. But just to shut him up, after a year, I went to church. I went to a little charismatic church in West LA.
Yeah.
And I knew that I'd exhausted everything. The surgeons told me, because of my age, we don't have the kind of technology yet that would be safe to operate on you with. You're going to have to wait. And it was the years of waiting that God used. But finally, I thought, I have nowhere else to go except vertical, except to the Lord.
Yeah.
So I accepted Jesus, and I had a born-again experience.
Oh,
you know,
really?
I did. It was subtle, but it was very, very unmistakable.
You felt that God was speaking to you?
Yes. And I felt like in a moment he showed me, remember when you were little and you used to sing in chapel and all that stuff?
Sure.
It's like I let go of him, but he never let go of me.
Yeah.
And
He absolutely loves you, he loves me, he loves all of us, and wants a relationship with us more than anything.
yeah,
So it's pretty easy once you accept it. But that's the trick, isn't it?
yeah. I just needed to say yes. And again, I'd tried everything. I'd tried the medical route, being told by orthopedic surgeons, we have something in the works. It's not going to be ready for a couple more years. You're just going to have to hang out and take painkiller and deal with it. So my life had come to a complete halt. I couldn't do anything but just kind of, you know, lay around and quit school. I could barely get around except on crutches. So God used that process to bring me to him. I had to be brought that low.
Yeah. And you had time certainly to study and to read the Bible and to get to know him better, didn't you?
I did. I didn't get a hold of a Bible right away. Ironically, the first Bible that I got a hold of, because I didn't know anything about the Bible, was a St. Joseph's Bible. It was a Catholic Bible, but it still has the gospel in it.
Sure.
And I started reading it, and, you know, the gospels, and then as I could understand, you know, progressed from there.
That's wonderful. What a great story. We're going to need to take a brief break, Eric. We've got an important message for our viewers, and I want to come back and ask you about other books and other ideas and what the future looks like for Eric McConnell. We'll be back with this terrific guest right after this. Hi, I'm Dale Davidson, host of Las Vegas Tonight. You know, radio has an enduring place in the heart of America. Sometimes it's music that can enliven your spirit or keep you company when you need some. More often for me, it's just been the right spoken word or two that can quiet my mind and soul. Radio brings me a reassuring word in the quiet of night or a welcoming voice early in the morning as I shake off the night's sleep and find my way into God's purpose for my day. And always, I find the best radio station is the one that brings me the best news, the gospel of Jesus Christ. My favorite radio station is KKVV in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's still right where it's been for years, at 1060 on the AM dial, hovering over Sin City like a gospel airship, broadcasting the good news of the abounding love that Jesus Christ has for every single one of us. No matter who you are or where you live, you can receive God's Word via the KKVV Gospel Airship. Just go to kkvv.com and click on Listen Live. KKVV is using all the tools that God's provided them, like podcasting and video streaming and video on demand, to produce programs that lift up our fellow believers and save the lost. If you feel a calling to speak to others about Jesus Christ on your very own show, pick up the phone and call the station. They'll be happy to tell you how. Call KKVV today at 702-731-5588 or drop them an email at kkvvradio@hotmail.com. Please join me in becoming part of the KKVV family. You'll be glad you did. Welcome back. I'm Dale Davidson, your host of Las Vegas Tonight. Thanks for tuning in. And I know you're glad if you watched the first segment. Eric McConnell's with us. He's a famous, I'm going to say famous, storyboard artist, animator, all kinds of stuff like that. And we're going to talk to him about how to make movies and his books as well. So thanks again for coming on, Eric.
My pleasure. So happy to be here.
Oh, great. Tell us about the studios. What is working in a Hollywood studio like?
It's really interesting. The thing about working in an animation studio as opposed to a live action film studio is that it still allows you in an animation setting to kind of be a nerd and an oddball, and get away with it because, you know, we do cartoons, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, you know, being a dramatic actor in a live action film setting, which is quite a bit different.
Oh, yeah.
But it's still Hollywood. It's still, there's the same sensibility there. There's the same culture, and it's a real cross section of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What attracts people to that industry? How did, you know, like, tell us how you ended up in it, and is it a typical kind of a trip that, you know, an artist, you know, a kid like you were up until age 30, just kind of playing at it, and then all of a sudden you end up doing it for a living? How does that happen?
Well, there were a lot of factors. In elementary school, I met another kid who wanted to be a filmmaker, and I met him in the 5th grade. We became really good friends. He lived right down the street from me. We would build carnivals and, you know, on Halloween, back then, haunted houses and with animatronics and stuff like that. And he was really passionate. And I think hanging around him a lot kind of fueled the fire, you know.
You saw the possibility.
The possibility. Though for a number of years, I deviated from actually pursuing a career in animation because I just was too intimidated by the skill level that you had to have in order to work in a professional setting. It's quite high. And so I wasted my life with a lot of, you know, secondary career choices.
Yeah, you mentioned that. So did you have a book? Did you have samples that you took into the studio and said, hire me?
I did, and that was a 2-year process. As I'd mentioned earlier, working in a different industry, but my leg broke, and that was God speaking to me saying, this is not what I have for you to do. So at that juncture, it was a 2-year period of putting together a professional portfolio, building on my art skill that I already had, and then taking specific classes that train in the skill and the craft of animation, which I did. And I went on a lot of interviews. The day that I got my first job, I was ready to quit. I'd been turned down, and I told the Lord, sitting out in the car before I went into this studio, that either I get this job or I'm giving it up, you know. And I got the job.
Wow.
It was a 2-year journey, you know.
Wow.
So
don't give up.
Don't give up.
That's what we're telling them. So tell me a little bit about the actual craft of animation. Were you painting individual cells in those days?
That was still being done. As a storyboard artist, I'm in the pre-production phase of animation. We're given a script, and then what I do as a storyboard artist is I take the script and I break it down shot by shot visually. I will draw key scenes, key poses of the characters. I think everybody's kind of familiar with a storyboard. They've seen them before. It's a sequence of shots represented visually to represent a script just for the director. And so I knew I didn't have the patience to do, you know, be an animator with the endless in-betweens and all that sort of thing. I wanted more of a bigger picture, sort of
conceptual part.
Conceptual,
the part,
It moved a little bit quicker, you know.
Yeah.
So that's what I trained for. Animation's like a assembly line in a car factory. Every step of the way is a specific, is a specific skill. So it takes a village to build a car. It takes a village to make an animated film.
Yeah. How long does a motion picture fully animated take to produce?
Well, it used to take a lot longer. I mean, now everything's digital. It's, you know, with the technology. But when I started, an animated feature, like a Disney or Pixar level film, you know, it'd take like 3 years. to
That's
do.
incredible.
Yeah, because there's just an enormous amount of work.
Yeah.
And then they all have to, bring it together.
Meld together.
Yeah, I mean, things have been streamlined somewhat since then.
Did you catch that tail end of that and how it began to go into computers? Were you working with computers too?
Not when I began. I started in 1992, but within, about 10 years, everything began to transition to digital. And I didn't like it at first. I was kicking and screaming because drawing on glass with a stylus, it was like, just very alien. I was used to the, that feel of
just the feel
pencil on paper.
On the paper, yeah.
It took me about a year to get used to, but it's like, if you want to have a job, you're going to have to learn this skill because that's where it's going. It's again, it's all about speed, getting more for less, so.
Did you work on any movies that we'd recognize? Can you talk about them?
Yeah, well, probably one that I think most people have heard of. My first actual storyboarding job, before then I had been an apprentice, was at Warner Brothers on a Steven Spielberg show called Pinky and the Brain, about the little mice that try to take over the world. A lot of obscure stuff after that. I did work on an animated version in the 90s, Iron Man.
Sure.
And Curious George, a few seasons of Curious George, and Land Before Time, the little dinosaurs, that have their adventures and all that stuff. And then, most of the studios that people are familiar with, the big name ones.
You worked at Disney, you worked at Pixar, you worked all.
I haven't worked at Pixar. I was primarily animation for television, and Pixar is it's feature film.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I read a great book about the early days of Warner Brothers and Bugs Bunny and all of that sort of stuff, and it just sounded to me like it was a riot, like they were having fun. Did you have some of that fun?
Yes. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, well, specifically Pinky and the Brain at Warner Brothers, that was one of the best animation jobs I ever had because even though, we're under a lot of pressure to produce stuff and make our deadlines, there was just a lot of shenanigans and antics that went on. And people would get on the PA. All you had to do was pick up your phone and, hit a couple of numbers and, make goofy sounds. And that would go on all day long. People playing pranks on each other. I mean, we're all grouped together as artists in the cubicles. It was as far as the eye could see. And it was a fun environment. It was like a big family.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it was good.
That's fun. I remember a good friend of mine works for Industrial Light and Magic up in San Francisco, and he's been an animator for them forever. And he told me once, I said, what have you worked on lately that I would recognize? He said, well, and then he mentioned a film. And then he said, did you see that when they were all squirming around and their legs were all in the air and kicking and kicking? I said, yeah. He said, that was me.
Yeah, right.
It's just maybe one little part of the thing.
One little part.
But when you sit and you watch it, you're just amazed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to actually, to see your name in the credits afterward, I mean, that was almost surreal. After a while, I kind of got used to it. But there are so many of us. I mean, it's a large, depending on the show or whatever. There's a lot of people that all, that it takes to make that.
Yeah, so. A little different environment with this, and you're just working with Craig, which is hard enough. He's here. That's why I said that. But
amen.
It's a different kind of environment. Just the two of you, and there's not a lot of supervision. That's a nice part of it, where people say, no, you can't do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. It's funny. Again, it's what I've learned in walking with the Lord all these years as a believing Christian is that what we think we're going to do with our lives or the direction it's going to take isn't necessarily God's plan. And so I thought I would be working in animation actively until I keeled over at an animation table.
Right.
But the Lord did take me out. a medical emergency much later in life after 25 years.
It's a long time.
Which led to this. So that was almost like a preparatory process, I think, for the Young Noah series.
Yeah. So you really feel, as a lot of people do when they take a sideways kind of a move, that God was behind it. Did you feel that at the time?
Yes, because I fought it, and I kept losing. The last show that I was working on, it was a Disney show, and had been contracted out to a smaller studio, but I had a medical emergency. One of my hips was giving me problems. I had to quit mid-production, but I mean, it was on an emergency basis, and they were very gracious. They left the door open. They said I could come back if I wanted to, if there was anything left. 5 surgeries later, in an 11-month period, left me basically I needed to do a lot of recuperating.
Right.
So after a year and a half, I tried to get back in the industry, and I could not get hired. And I literally had jobs that were promised to me just slip right through my fingers. But it was in a way that I knew it was the voice of God going, "You're done. That chapter's closed.
I want you to do something else."
I want you to do something else. And I didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
I mean, I toyed with the idea of Young Noah, but then Craig came around again with the idea fresh, and I'm thinking, maybe this is meant to be.
Yeah. How's it been going? Are you getting traction with the series?
I am, yeah. I mean, the books are available for sale on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I've been active doing a lot of different things, so I'm wanting to get the word out. I'm wanting to find the proper audience, the parents and the kids that I think would really benefit from what these books offer. They're not your typical children's book. I mean, they're longer stories, they have a story arc, and it does deal with real life issues that a lot of kids face that are painful. Modern problems set in the ancient world.
Yeah.
But
you think parents are adult enough, mature enough to be able to deal with the questions?
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Like I said, these books don't really pull any punches.
Right.
Everything is treated tastefully. Everything's treated gently, and it is emphasized, because they are faith-based books, that ultimately God is the source of all solutions to problems and need for healing, and is the healer, and is the one who loves the child the most, even more than their own earthly parents.
Yes.
So some people, that might be a little bit too much, but for people that are ready to, deal with life issues, yeah. Yeah,
it's important, and it's an opener to a conversation. I wonder whether the homeschool community would embrace these books.
I think that'd be a great place to start.
Yeah. So we've had several advocates, for homeschooling on the air. Robert Bortons, who's the president of Classical Conversations. Most of them, most of the groups of homeschoolers use his curriculum. I'll see if I can get you in touch with him.
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be great.
Because you never know, what's
you never
going to
know.
work. People are grasping at how to educate the youth of today. And I think this is a great opportunity for them to do that.
Oh, thank you. Well, I hope so.
Yeah. And well, we appreciate you coming on the show. We once again want to mention to you that we've got 3 in the series, right? A Lamb's Tale, Eagle Eye, and What's Eating Gabby.
That's the newest.
Okay, that's a good one. They're all good. Eric McConnell, we're gonna bring on Craig Perry next, who's the brainiac behind this entire story. Brainiac, is that right? That's what he is. We'll be back with Craig, and thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you, Dale.
Right after this.
What is the Bible? What does it say? Why do people care about it? And what does it have to do with you? Christians claim the Bible was authored by God through human hands to share His story and help us understand who He is. It's a diverse collection of literature, including historical accounts, poetry, stories, and wisdom. It contains mind-blowing adventures like men being thrown into a fire-filled furnace, yet they weren't burned. It speaks of an old man who was lowered into a lion's den, only to be supernaturally protected and not eaten. It also tells the story of a little girl who had died, yet miraculously came back to life. The Bible is one book that contains 66 smaller books. It was written over a period of 1,500 years and authored by over 40 different people that range from shepherds to doctors, scholars, farmers, and kings. Completed 2,000 years ago, historians say it's one of the most reliable books on the planet. Over 10,000 manuscripts have survived the centuries. Compare that to only 235 known manuscripts of Shakespeare's First Folio. There have been over 5 billion copies printed worldwide, making it the most reproduced book in the world. The Bible is divided into two sections, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament is well known for its early history of the world and insight into life, giving wisdom such as don't murder and love one another. Other sections are a bit racy, such as your breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle. The first 4 books in the New Testament tell the story of Jesus through the perspectives of 4 of his closest friends. The rest of the New Testament is stories and letters revealing what Jesus' closest followers did after his time on earth. God used average people to heal all kinds of diseases and drive out demons. Many of Jesus' followers were killed because they dared to preach his message. Jesus claimed to be the human manifestation of God's unfailing love for humanity and the secret for true inner peace. He gave hope to the hopeless, love to the unloved, and then gave his life to bring never-ending life to everyone who would believe in him. That's where you come in. Beware, reading this book will change you. As you read it, its message of hope will come alive in you. That's what it's designed to do. Why not give it a shot and see for yourself what it says? It just might surprise you.
And welcome back to Las Vegas Tonight. I'm your host, Dale Davidson. We're having a good time here in the studio. We just had a laugh, and we hope we bring some to you. Craig Perry, my friend, is with us. Craig is the author of this series and the guy with the idea, with the concept. You've been friends a long time with Eric, huh?
We've been friends for over 30 years. Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
And so when he was animating, you were still thinking about this series, hoping that one day he'd get fired. No, I didn't mean that.
Well, he hadn't been in the field yet.
Yeah.
And he was working odd jobs, and he didn't see his genius yet. I did.
Yeah.
Because I always drew as a child. And I did it for escaping.
Yeah.
Because I had a lot of learning disabilities myself, I didn't realize at the time, I drew all the time. And
yeah.
I mean, on my report card, on the notes from the teacher that I was getting in trouble, there were drawings of battleships and tanks and stuff.
Yeah.
And we were in this men's group together that met for about 3 or 4 years. And that's a really funny story in itself. Someday I'll tell you. And he's so amazingly, if I had his ability, oh my gosh. But as Eric shared, he didn't have that confidence yet.
Yeah.
So I drew this picture that said, one day with these hands, you'll bring me glory.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that I was going to be part of that process. I didn't know what it was going to be, but when I became a therapist, as I was sharing before, children have an inability, or not an inability, but a developmental level of being able to articulate feelings and emotion, and that's why therapists use play therapy. And during one of these sessions I was taking continuing education from, as I was going for my degree and after, I learned all these amazing things, and then one day I would constantly, what do you think about this, Eric? Wait, I don't have time. What do you about? No, I don't have time. And then all of a sudden he started sending me a picture here and there, but I didn't have time. and
to do the whole thing.
You know, anything he sends me, I treasure it, because like I said, I'm not a cuticle next to him when it comes to art, but anybody knows me, I'm an artist.
Yeah.
And I'm very creative, but that was out of my pain. And so the first book deals with like someone having a learning disability. It's a shortened leg. They can't keep up with the herd. They're isolated. They're feeling depressed. They're feeling shame, toxic shame, all these terms that we use in therapy. And Noah comes up with this idea. And I remember when Eric and I were first putting this together, we had a different opinion about dinosaurs being in it. And I think he shared that in the first series, and with human beings, and we argued back and forth, and I drew this little drawing, and I said there has to be dinosaurs in it, and so if you
kids
read,
love dinosaurs too.
Yeah,
they
so
just
if you,
love them.
I'm sorry, if you read the book, you'll see he's talking to God, and hears this voice, and it's Bronny the brontosaurus in the trees eating a leaf or so, and he's like, what? And that's how the relationship begins, and that's how the series continues.
Wow, that's great. Now, the last one is different in a way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, tell me about what's eating Gabby.
If it's okay to say, it's what a lot of people go through when they're divorced. Children up to about 6, 7 years of age are very egocentric. If something goes wrong, it's their fault. So when parents are fighting, if a divorce takes place or a separation, the child feels guilty because of their developmental level that they had something to do with it, that they're the cause of it. Maybe I could have done something. And that creates in them a life pattern of trying to please people, of not feeling ever enough. And it turns into an adult pattern in their relationships, in their lives, in their careers, and it plays itself out. So this is dealing with something, maybe if I'm going through a separation or even a divorce, the parent can share this, that you're not alone, that there's millions of people go through this. And as you know, 60% of most people in America are from a divorce background. Yeah. Because there's 60% of the marriages end in divorce. Yeah. So it's as you being also a minister, you know, what's not talked about doesn't exist, but it still exists in our churches, in our congregations, and in our society. So it's a way to articulate something uncomfortable in a more pleasant manner to make people feel, and the kids will identify with it very much, and the parent might even cry a little bit when they're sharing this, because when they get to, but we of course we have the, you know, you have the good part at the end where people start to come together, the parents communicate that we're always going to love you, we're always going to be there. It's not about you, it's just mommy and daddy can't get along. Yeah, yeah. Any age, you think? Up to what age does it make sense? Well, the other thing, Dale, is my hope is that therapists will use these books. Yeah. Because they could use these to help the children. Any age, I would say 5, 6, 7, 8. Kids are very complicated today. I mean, I don't know about you, but when my iPad gets stuck, it's the kids next door. It goes around. Here you go, you know. And I'm like, what did you just do? You know. When I was teaching, I worked with some autism kids, and the blessing they got was the iPad if they did what it was supposed to do. Yeah. And I couldn't remember the code, and the kid would just take it, go, and then, you know, and then I wasn't even there anymore, you know. I was like, how did you do that? You know. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. Let's talk about your childhood a little bit. Eric revealed that he was a lonely kid, and hence the creativity. Did you have that same kind of experience? I had a very outgoing personality, as you can tell, but I became very isolative because I had dyslexia. And because of the era I grew up, they didn't know what it was. No, they just shamed the heck out of you. Yeah. And you know, the difference between shame is you do something to change that. Toxic shame is something's wrong with me. So I grew up constantly being shamed in school. It affected my self-worth, self-esteem, and how I saw my world. Yeah. And so I would escape through drawing. I always tell people I'm Lex Dexic, and they go, what's that? I go, that's dyslexia backwards.
That's funny. I like it.
But see, that's a defense mechanism. So I won't feel shame when you find out I'm dyslexic.
Yeah.
So we all do those things, like humor. But so it was only being a therapist through grad school, I started to understand why I do the things I did. And being a cognitive therapist, it's not what happens to you in life, it's the narrative you give what happens to you becomes your reality. So you have to tell yourself. What goes
in the movie in your head.
Just like a relationship with God. It's why people, I mean, you have to ask yourself, Dale, why, if Jesus says God is spirit, why did he choose to reveal himself as a father? Why? Because we know in society, children that don't get that seal of approval of the father are constantly looking for that affirmation and that constant seeking that relationship, and it never happens. You know what I'm saying? So these books are going to address some of these childhood issues, hopefully, that they won't have when they're adults.
And prevent that toxic shame. And what a service that would be for everybody. You've done a lot of therapy with kids, and you've done it over a period of time. Have you seen it get worse or better in terms of where kids are today because of the complexity of society? Because of social media, because of families breaking up. Do you think it's a worse situation now than it was 20 years ago?
Well, one of the things, first of all, my secret to counseling is I'm not alone. I'm with the Holy Spirit when you come into the room with me. And he gives me these questions, and I just, and they go, why are you asking? I don't know why I'm asking, but answer the question. And some people get really upset with me.
Somebody told me.
Well, you can't really say that, but but I know him, I know her. And one of the things happened when I was a drug and alcohol counselor in Hell's Kitchen, Manhattan, and I worked with the Crips, the Bloods, Latin Kings, MS-13, Garvey, alcoholic, and the mob. I would see these 37-year-olds have 6 kids or 7 kids with different women, yet they'd be married with 4 kids, and they were living irresponsibly. And I see patterns. That's what I do. I see patterns, and then the brain gets going. And so I said to myself, well, I used to work with special needs children. And special needs children, you have a chronological age and a physical age, right? So I said, maybe there's a mental age. And so I started asking these people from the tough gangs and stuff, how old do you see yourself emotionally? And after they'd curse me out 5 or 6 times, I'd still, how old do you see yourself emotionally? And they would say 12. They would say 13. And I would say, what traumatically happened in your life at that time? My brother got killed by the gang. My mother OD'd. My, on heroin. And I started to see that their emotional level was who they were at 37, and that's why they were being promiscuous, being irresponsible. And I would tell them, you can't change what you don't acknowledge. So 6 months later, I'd say, how old are you today emotionally? And they'd laugh and say, I feel like I'm 19. Oh, so you're taking responsibility, you're starting to do this, or 20, and it was amazing, an insight. So that's why I think Jesus says, you got to come to me as a child.
Oh, I love that, the way you tied it in. I have heard through people I know in drug and alcohol counseling that they try to get to that age when they started using. And that's when they were stuck emotionally. So are they just stuffed at age 13 or 14?
They're flatlined emotionally, and they're And so what kind of relationship are they going to seek? Is someone at that level. And that's why you have a lot of people in addiction. Their addiction's not the problem. They're addicted to chaos. They're addicted to the trauma. They're addicted to, they never get resolved. And they pick someone who reinforces that, and then they never get out of it. And that's what our prisons are full of, and that's why group therapy is so powerful, because you become the person who you are in your family, in the group, automatically, because the anxiety of the people.
Wow. That's really interesting.
Can I tell you a funny story?
Yeah, please do.
I have a great friend named Nigel, and he's 10 times better than me in counseling, ever would be. He's like a genius, a colleague. You have to have him on the show. He's British, okay, so he has very good articulation. But he gave me this book, and I tried it, and I would have, 100 people on a Friday to have to come to service. It's not a service, but we had to keep them in the building.
Yeah.
And so I tried this thing that I read in the book. And I said, because they don't know who I am, the new people, and I said, I want you, without a word, go through this group and pick someone who you feel would be part of your family. And they looked at me like I was crazy. You know?
Of course.
You know, who's this guy from whatever? And I said, now sit down, take 2-3 minutes, and talk to each other. Now I want you to go up and pick somebody else you think would be in your family if you had someone in the family. And I said, how many people were from abused family or sitting with people abused? How many were sexually abused? Were you sitting with sexually abused? How many of you people have drinking problems or sitting? And you antisocial guys, you're already sitting in the corner over there. And they all started laughing. And immediately, Mr. Parry became like, oh, I don't want to mess with this guy, you know? And it was powerful.
Yeah.
It was powerful.
Yeah.
So I love doing that. You know?
Yeah, yeah. You know, why did you become a therapist?
I was always into truth as a child.
Yeah.
And when truth is absolute. There is an answer to something, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And I always sought out truth. And when I don't see truth, it really irritates me. It really gets stuck in my craw. There's something not being truthful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the truth will set you free, but first it's got to make you miserable.
Sure. That's right. Yeah. And it does, doesn't it?
But then after it's glory. So we live in a world that we have to tell ourselves lies because it's not friendly out there.
Yeah, that's the truth.
And I became a therapist. It's too long a story, but I fought it. But I was doing it all the time. But you could see, I remember I went through a really hard, difficult relationship that because of the way I saw myself at that time, I had those feelings.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm going to talk to a rabbi and a minister. They want to take me out to lunch. I can't wait to talk to these people. And they'd sit there and tell me their problems. And I'd scratch my head. I go, don't you say I'm an emotional wreck? And you're telling me your problems? And I would sit there and give them back solutions. And I'm going, something's wrong with this picture. It took 20 years for me to see that.
Wow, wow. We only have a couple minutes left.
Yes.
You talk straight to people. You communicate in a great way. Would you mind using your camera, which is this one here in the middle?
Okay.
And address people on why it's important for them to accept Christ in their lives?
You're always going to be searching for something, and it's the search that makes you think you're going to find it. But when you find it, it always lets you down. So why is that? And I deal with a lot in addictions, and I remember this guy I was talking to, and he asked me if I had any cocaine, and I said, I don't have any cocaine, but you don't want to ask me that question because I'm a drug and alcohol counselor. I said, let me ask you a question. And he said, what? I said, well, what's the definition of mental health? And he didn't know, and I said, it's ability to soothe oneself off a mother's breast. We call it weaning. The child is able to soothe himself. So if you always need something outside yourself to soothe yourself, what are you telling yourself you're not seeing or not allowing yourself to hear? And he said, I'm looking for God. We're all looking for God. Even the atheist is looking. The agnostic is looking. But we just don't want to take the responsibility if we do find him. And he says, come all to me who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. If you're tired, find the Lord. It'll change your life forever. And I've never looked back ever since.
Thank you. It was very well done and well stated.
Well, thank you.
Got to come back.
Lord willing.
So Eric and Craig are a great pair. They've done a terrific series called Young Noah, and you can get the book by going to youngnoahadventures.com. You guys are great. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks. The honor of being here.
Yeah, God bless you. And as I try to remember to say each and every episode of Las Vegas Tonight, when it comes to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, please walk with him. Amen. God bless you.
When I wake
won't be no need of the moon, no need of the sun. There'll never be no night. Heaven's gonna shine, and a mansion will be mine. Jesus will be the light. Some mornings I get up and trouble's at the door. That trouble hides the light of day. Then I think of that morning when I wake up over there in the land where troubles roll away. There won't be no need of the moon, no need of the sun. There'll never be no night. Heaven's gonna shine, and a mansion will be mine. Jesus will be the light. Some morning I'll get up in that land so bright and fair. The streets of gold are gonna shine, but the reason they'll be shining and heaven will be fair is that Jesus will be the light. There won't be no need of the moon, no need of the sun. There'll never be no night. Heaven's gonna shine, and a mansion will be mine. Jesus will be the light. There won't be no need of the moon, no need of the sun. There'll never be no night. Heaven's gonna shine, and a mansion will be mine. Jesus will be the light. Morning shine, shine, shine. Las Vegas, shine your light on me.
You've been watching Las Vegas Tonight with your host, Dale Davidson. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of our show. We so appreciate your loyalty to our program. To keep Las Vegas Tonight on the air, please go to our website, vegassaints.org, and click the Donate button. To send a check or money order, please make it out to Dale Wynn Davidson Ministries and mail it to 9030 West Sahara Avenue, Suite 255, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89117. To suggest a guest to appear on the show or any other suggestions or questions, write to Dale at dalewdavidson@yahoo.com or call him at 702-480-3989.